I have Sana. Can you confirm that you could hear? Similar.
No, not really. It was a pan.
Oh, okay.
I moderated. It was on recycling. Hopefully they do it again. Of course. Of course. Trader Joe's is interesting. It's like I feel his vibes. For Trader. Me.
He didn't mention that.
Vehemently opposed. It doesn't seem so we got going on.
Finished.
Oh, yeah.
I did the with Kristen. They did the.
Yeah, that's the other thing is
The KTV.
now I just reading. I think we had, yeah, it was colder near that one.
I think, yeah,
Yeah.
they worse. The wind on your tongue.
Like 10:30. Anytime we got.
Yes, I'd be curious, especially because you got to see the fruit. Wow. I seen there was a.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, yes, yes.
And it was very cold then too. Like I remember that being a particularly night. Yes, and the wind being like a big issue in particular.
Yeah, Jamie did say that like Gasparilla was cold. Like for
It
whatever.
was for us, yeah.
It was cold.
Nonchalant. I guess I should say I don't know.
You have to.
Like really fun about doing. Yeah. I think that we it's not originally.
Hey everyone, welcome to Globe and PCGS's first speaker series for the spring semester. Very happy to have you here. Globe is a student organization called Global Leaders of a Better Environment, and we focus on connecting students with businesses. And we'll do that more. She's here.
I think there is no sound. Is it cutting off or is it just me?
Can you hear us? No.
Now, yes.
Any credit for any.
No, it's the presentation isn't.
Welcome again.
I'm sure you're super excited.
No, I love it.
First, can you guys please sign in for me on this QR code? I know you signed up outside. It just helps us get funds for the student organization if you sign in over here. This on for a bit.
Do we have to use the login?
I don't know. So maybe just your email. Registration requires you. And you know if you can do it. Let's you do it. Any phones up, so I'm gonna go next. This is our social media. This is how you can stay in touch with us. There's our Instagram where we post about the speaker series, about any other student organizations work. Then we have our group me. We will post about any internship opportunities, volunteering opportunities, everything on the group me. And then the Bulls Connect is where you just saw the event, and this would also show up on MSC, and we would have yard signs everywhere around campus. This is Patel College of Global Sustainability. This is how you would keep up with them. So today's speaker is going to be talking about sustainable infrastructure, sustainable communities, UNSDG. She's from here, Tampa. She studied in PCGS. Her master's was in food sustainability. So if any one of you are studying that, you can always talk to her. It's Dr. Dorsey. She's a sustainability and resilience officer with the City of Tampa. She's going to be talking about how she works on policies, infrastructure, and resilience within Tampa. Next, I'm going to let her talk about. Thanks. Anyone wanted to check in again?
Can I advance the slides or do you guys need to advance this? Oh, I could do it. Amazing. Thank you. Well, thanks all for being here. Really appreciate it. I didn't make any slides for this, but just to go, I think that's one of the things they asked me to do is kind of go through my background and just understand how I got here. So I studied, my undergrad was at animal sciences at the University of Florida. So I actually was on like a pre-vet track. I still love animals. That's like, I think one of, they talk about like your whys, like why do you get into this work? I think that kind of still remains pretty central for me. Big, flora fauna gal. Really want to make sure that we have a world where we continue to get to see those and experience those. Like my favorite thing is to be out, and that's like my connection, my battery recharge is being out in the middle of the nowhere, away from people. No offense. And just getting to see all the things that this world has to offer, and just knowing that we try to mimic and engineer and all this stuff, but this millions of years of evolution has already created, and these solutions has already perfected this balance. There's no such thing as waste. PH's favorite thing. No such thing as waste in the natural world. And so we have a lot to learn from it, and we don't fully understand it, which is why we are in the predicament that we are in today. But anyway, so I got a sustainability job, actually very, very luckily through, someone that was one of my professors out of undergrad, and I worked for Aramark. So they're like a big dining provider. I don't know if they're still USFs, but they were UFs at the time. And so I was able to do some composting programs, some like gardening programs. And that was really like my first professional experience in this world. I was furloughed during the pandemic. So just like everyone else, 2020 was a trying time, unexpected curveball, and I didn't really know what was next. I knew I wanted to go to graduate school, didn't know when, didn't exactly know what. Like I knew I wanted to do sustainability something, but my ag background was really the only experience I had, and what still something that I really love and enjoy. And so I found out about this program here in Tampa. I had some friends here that were studying in medical school and graduate school. And I was like, Tampa, never, I'm from Miami originally, so Floridian, but not from Tampa. I am one of the Tampa transplants, but I always say I get half credit because I'm from Florida. And that's where what brought me here, found out about the program, applied, was accepted, and then have stayed ever since. So Tampa's been home since 2020. Going to Patel during in the middle of the pandemic was interesting. Thankfully, it's a really small college, and so we were able to keep our distance. I moved to Tampa to go to grad school, so I was coming to class as much as I could, unless I was feeling under the weather for whatever reason. And I was in this room literally 3 years ago, 4 years ago, lost track. 2020 to 2022. I was in this exact room in your seat, which is really exciting and just goes to show in a very small amount of time, things can change very drastically. Let's see. So that's my story. I started with the city, I interned with the city. And so one of my lessons maybe to you all is don't, if a door opens up, go through it. It doesn't need to be perfect. Your life's not going to work out to be some mapped out thing, 5-year plan that you have. Like there's going to be so many unexpected things that you're not going to know. And that opportunity was not one that I expected. I got it on my email. Hey, there's this internship program with the solid waste department at the City of Tampa. I took it as an opportunity. I hadn't worked in any kind of local government setting and knew that that was something that I wanted to explore during my graduate program. And then I spent about a year job searching. So I was not one of the ones who got really lucky that like as soon as I graduated, there was a job waiting for me. I waited and applied. Knew that the coordinator position at the city was coming out from when I was an intern, but I'm like, I'm going to have a job by then. I can't wait for that position. I did not have a job, applied for the position, was fortunate to get the role, and then have now climbed up into the officer position once my predecessor took another opportunity outside the city. So just like that, in the blink of an eye, went from not having a job, looking for almost an entire year for a job, to now being the officer for the sustainability of Tampa. So that's my story, and happy to always get into any more details after this. So today I'm going to focus more sustainability and resilience. They overlap. We kind of use them interchangeably, but they're not exactly the same. So I'm actually going to focus a little bit more on resilience today in my talk, because I think a lot of people kind of understand sustainability. Obviously, if you go to Patel, like that's what your entire graduate degree is about. And so you should understand sustainability. So I figured today would be interesting to see resilience and think about how the impacts of the storms that we had in 2024 impacted the city of Tampa, and what are the lessons learned. And we'll also just get into some like local government stuff. I think the amount of slides I have in here is going to be not possible probably to get through all of them. So I'm going to get through as many, and then we'll just kind of let it be conversational. So I don't really care how many slides we get through. All right, so Tampa, just like a big overview of Tampa, right? It's this super weird shaped city. You can see, I don't know if this works. So you can see that's like the outline of our city limits, and there's water here, and there's water here. So one thing I think a lot of people forget, like Pinellas County gets a lot of the, beach focus and maybe the resources for that, but we have 127 miles of coastline. Like some of it's on the river. It's not high wave energy, other than maybe the big ships. That's probably our biggest wave energy, is all the port traffic that we get. One of the busiest ports, biggest port by volume in Florida. By money, it's Miami. And so that's something that's pretty big for our city. We have a population of about 400,000. So we are one of the largest cities in Florida. What else? Our tree canopy, this is a few years old. This is from our climate action plan. Our tree canopy is sitting at 29.9. So we'll call that about 30, which is kind of one of the minimum. That's kind of like a baseline from an urban forestry perspective that you want to be at. We had some big impacts from the storms that knocked a lot of trees down. Obviously, if you were here, you saw it with your own eyes. We'll go from there. I think water is really interesting, right? I always say I do a lot of topics all over the place: urban forestry, coastal resilience, solid waste, waste reduction, water. Water in regards to like water quality, stormwater, water conservation is probably one of the biggest topics that we should be tackling in our city, probably in the world. And so a lot of our water, especially at our residential, is used just for irrigation. So it's literally just to water invasive European turf grass that does not belong in our ecosystem. Again, we have not learned from the ecosystem that has already given us the solution is to plant the stuff that is supposed to be here. And so that's a big focus of our water conservation team. They're like 5-ish people. It's not very big. You'll kind of see a theme in local government with that. So lots going on. Okay, so Tampa's sustainability and resilience story started when Mayor Castor was elected. So in 2019, the sustainability and resilience team before this date did not exist in the city. There was no officer, there was no coordinator, there was nothing. So in 2019, she had these 5 strategic goals. This one is representing sustainability and resilience. So because of her, we hired our first sustainability and resilience officer. Some of you have gotten to meet him. My predecessor, my good friend, Whit Rummer, who basically started this all. He started the offices. He laid the foundation for a lot of the work that we're doing today. In May of 2020. So we're very young, obviously, as a team, as a concept, as a city, and embedded in the city as a team. So we're still kind of getting started and just the tip of the iceberg in a lot of ways. So this is the mission statement that they created when we brought Whit on board and Whit created. And so I'm not going to read it to you, but I think it kind of hits home a lot of things that will probably resonate: quality of life, conserving natural resources, clean energy, equity, equitable resilience. So those are all big things that we're all thinking about. And, you guys are probably focusing a lot in class. So I say these are our big 3. So we have 3 major plans that guide all the work that we do, whether it's planning the work that we do or implementing and tracking. So the first one was Resilient Tampa. The next one that came out was our climate action plan, and the most recent is our heat resilience playbook. So Resilient Tampa, so about a year after Whit came on board, they released Resilient Tampa. This was the first plan that the city had ever created for anything sustainability and resilience. When you read it now, it's like very COVID coded, in a lot of the programs and things. It's not bad by any means, but there are probably a lot of adjustments that we need to make. And it's interesting how in just 5 years, things need to be updated and changed as life moves and the world changes rather quickly. All right, the next one was our climate action and equity plan. So this one came out in summer of 2023. Lots of initiatives and goals, and really the 3 things that marry all of those initiatives together is mitigation in regard to carbon emissions, adaptations. We've already baked in for many decades to come the carbon that we've released, and so those effects will, even if we stopped releasing carbon today, those effects will still be, we're still going to be seeing those effects for decades to come. So we had no choice but to start adapting as well. And then engaging our community. So having like that lens of equity along the way. So with the heat resilience playbook, why do we have an entire playbook, an entire plan dedicated to just heat? There are a lot of hazards, right? The storms being, obviously the one that probably gets the most like spotlight and attention. And the big deal about heat is this. I don't think I have 2025 updated numbers, but every year in the US, heat kills more people than most of those other hazards even combined. So if you were to combine flooding and lightning and tornadoes and even hurricanes, heat usually wins. And I would say a lot of public health professionals and medical professionals feel this number is underreported. So this number is probably actually a lot higher. So they say like coded in the medical industry or fire rescue, they might code it as a heart attack, even though maybe the heart attack was actually caused by an extreme heat event or being exposed to that. And so this is the reason we have a whole playbook, and specifically for Tampa, but Tampa is a hot place, right? Well, yes, Tampa is a hot place, but Tampa is not the same hot place it was 40, 80, 60 years ago, like decades ago. We had in the 60s, 20 days where the heat index was over 100 degrees. So heat index is heat and humidity. So the feels like temperature, not just like the thermometer temperature. And so we're seeing 4 times as many days where the heat index is over 100. So in 2024, we had 90. So we're actually even 10 days above that. So we went from less than a month to a quarter of our year. That's a huge difference. And not being able to cool off at night is also a problem. It doesn't let our city get that reprieve that we typically would get. So we broke a lot of records. We love being Tampa Bay, but this is not the thing we want to be Tampa Bay with, right? We're not winning here. So we have won the first time Tampa hits 100 degrees. So that's ambient temperature, just straight up a thermometer reading. That's not including humidity. With humidity, we reached 119. Those are on 2 separate days. So that's problematic. That's a public health crisis in a lot of ways. All right, getting into a little bit of local government stuff. Who lives in the city of Tampa? Anyone? Okay. Does anyone know any of these folks here? Do you know who your council member is?
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Everyone who lives in the city, these three are your at-large, so meaning they represent the entire city. So the reason is like the decisions that we make, right? I'm a team of 3, the sustainability and resilience team, even with some really amazing champions in other departments. Ultimately, right, we have 3 branches of government. And this is one of the ones that's very important for us to make decisions, right? And then the other 4 represent certain districts. So this is our city council. And with one of the lessons here, I think, is budget. One of the lessons here is one of them has described them as a reactionary council. So when you go into private industry, right, sustainability, I think they talk about the Mickey Mouse, how the economic circle gets a lot bigger than the social and the environment. Well, here we are not doing things to make more money because we are a city. We don't have profits, but we do have political influence. Politics is going to make influence on these decisions, and they're not going to be necessarily based on best practice or data. And so it's very important that those who do, feel like data and science and all those good things are important, and that's what should be guiding our decision making, are vocal, because if these people don't hear it, doesn't really matter. So whoever's in front of them and talking the loudest, that's usually the way they're going to go. And it's not to disparage them. That's just like how politics work, right? In all local government. So there are, I don't know about hundreds, but there are dozens of Kaylas in local government around Florida. So contrary to Florida being, the anti-climate change, say that you can't say this, you can't say equity. There are lots of us at the local level doing this work on the ground. And we really, really could use more support, to be honest, of our community to be louder, to show up to these. And I spend 40, 50, however many hours a week, 60 hours a week fighting from the inside. I can't fight from the outside too. It's not my role. Number one, being a city staff member, but it's also just like an unfair ask of me. I can't do both. We need everyone's help in order to push this stuff forward. All right, so city budget, the things that you dream about, but this is how the sausage gets made, right? This is the important stuff. So the entire city of Tampa's budget for fiscal year 26 is $1.9 billion. So seems like a lot. Goes pretty quickly. So the sustainability and resilience budget is in the general fund, which is like the piece of the pie that is split between the most needs and the most uses. It's the one that's the hardest. And so in this general fund, 60% of it goes to police and fire. So that's a lot. It's a lot of money. And rightfully so. We live in one of the safest cities in the country, and that does not come at $0. So that's the expenditure we have. And then we have Parks and Recreation eats up the next largest. We have over 200 parks in the city of Tampa. We have a lot of green space, a lot of needs, really great after school programs and summer programs. I love our parks, and we have our green team here who spends a ton of time in our parks. So you can ask them, they probably know some spots. In the central government, so now even a smaller piece of the already, a smaller piece of the pie. This is where my budget sits, and all 500,000, some of that is actually kept for a rebate for developers to use who want to get their permit fees back if they are a lead building. So we're trying to like incentivize, but just I don't have access to all 500. So in the $1.9 billion budget, I get this. So this is the reality. And I don't know what a lot of my peers have in other cities. I would imagine it's not that much different. None of that budget can go to capital. And to put things into perspective, our mobility team said to re-signalize put like light signals up for traffic signals. One intersection is $1 million. So I can't even pay with that to signalize one intersection. So this stuff is expensive. Infrastructure is very expensive. The other piece of the pie is our enterprise, just a little bit of background. So our wastewater, solid waste, parking folks, and the water department, they get their own buckets, so they don't need that general fund, that one piece of the pie, they don't have to fight. So when you pay your water bill, you're helping supply the funding that they need to make sure that they can deliver safe and good, high quality drinking water that comes out of your tap. So there's this, talk about the state of Florida and things happening right now. There's a huge push, I'm sure some of you have seen it, to eliminate property taxes. It seems like a great deal, right? No one likes to pay extra taxes. However, this is the reality. So our property tax revenue is not enough to pay for even the fire and police portion of that pie. So we would be left with a pretty huge deficit. Say the least, and would cause, let's see, with parks and recreation included, would cause 164 million. So somehow we would have to go find, I don't know how, either be short 164 million or not have it. And we're gonna have to start cutting stuff or charging for things for these free services that we provide to the community. And so, that's that. Let you make your own decision, but that is something that we see, I think personally, I think if it gets on the ballot, a lot of people will vote to eliminate it, not realizing the consequence of what it might cause. So one of the talking points, right, for that is city budgets and staff has grown a lot. We're inflated, we're wasteful spending. And let me be the first to say there's always things we could be better at, and there's always things that we could be more efficient at. I can see it firsthand. I'm in it. I have to deal with some of the inefficiencies on a day-to-day basis. But at least for the city of Tampa, I can't speak to other cities. Our staffing has virtually not changed since pre-Great Recession. That is crazy. We have added 70,000 residents and we've gained no staff. So I think we're about as efficient as you can get. I think if you make us any more efficient, you're going to cut into bone at this point. There is no meat to cut into. This is just where we are. And I would say at the same time, we're asked to do more and more every year. The expectations have continued to rise. Like my own entire team didn't exist in 2007. All right, now let's get into, that's enough for local government for now. Always happy to spend more time on it. I'm going to get into resilience and what that means. So the analogy I always hear is resilience is like a rubber band because you stretch it and then it goes back and then you stretch it. Like no matter where you stress it, it always comes back to that normal state. I would argue resilience should be like a muscle. Why? Okay. So first, a muscle is not the same strength in every part of your muscle. There's different parts of it, right, that it gets stronger at. Your quad is not going to be helpful in certain exercises, and then other, it's going to be the muscle that really drives it. And so I think the same can be said for resilience, right? Like you're not going to be the same level of resilience for every hazard or in every instance. It's going to vary. The next is it gets stronger with every rep, right? Every rep you do, you get a little stronger. You get a little stronger. The rubber band, you stretch it, it's the same amount of strength. So you bounce back, and then I would argue resilience is bouncing forward. Resilience causes you to actually like have damage. When you stretch that muscle, you are creating micro tears in your muscle, and then you need time to heal in order for it to grow back a little bit stronger. So you can't say, City of Tampa, you went through 2 hurricanes, don't be just fine. Don't learn any, learn what you need to do, but you aren't going to see any impacts. That is just not the reality. You're going to see impacts. You're going to get knocked down, and then you need to learn from it and get up again. So the rubber band, you stretch it, I don't know how many times, 1,000 times, eventually it's going to snap, right? Like it's not going to get stronger over time. And then the last is it requires inputs and time to repair and recover. So the muscle needs that. A rubber band, the impacts on inputs are pretty minimal. And so for resilience, we'll get into some of that now. Lots of, just like sustainability, resilience has a lot of different definitions. I would say it's the ability to adapt, manage, and recover from a shock or a stressor. And like a muscle in your body, it requires a few things. So if you, I guess this analogy kind of helps with both. If you sit on your couch and do nothing, you're not going to get stronger. You're also not going to get more resilient if you don't purposefully try to be more resilient. Like you have to have the intention, have the dedication, and put that work in, or it's not just going to magically happen just because you say, I want to be more resilient. And the same for growth, right? Like you have to stress that muscle. You have to actually go through some shocks and stressors in order to come out more resilient. Another one is using information and experiences to evolve. What we did in exercise science 40 years ago, what we did in resilience 40 years ago is probably not what we should be doing today or what's best practice today. So this science is going to continue to evolve, and that's just like, that's science, right? Science is not stagnant, it keeps changing. And another thing is time is an important factor. So if a city can recover, I don't know, in 12 months after a huge disaster or 36 months, right? Like 3 years, you could make some assumptions about resilience. It also works the other way. Like I said, you can't just expect something major to happen like that and then us to just pop up the next day and be like, it's fine, nothing happened, right? Like there's going to be impacts. So resilience is not about bouncing back, it's about getting stronger. So you're not going to be back to the same, you shouldn't be at least, right? If you're practicing resilience, you shouldn't be the same that you were before, you should be stronger. And so Tampa should not be the same city it was before we had the 2024 hurricanes. We should be learning from that experience to get stronger. But it is up to us now to actually turn those lessons into that new muscle strength and continue to improve. So let's get into some lessons learned from the storms, from our perspective. So how we are building our resilience muscle, how I think we collectively, right, not just the city of Tampa, is building our resilience muscle. So just as a unfortunate reminder, but just a reminder, these storms didn't impact us the same way. We had 2 storms, 13 days apart. Helene was categorized as a huge surge event. So we had 7.2 feet of surge, and that's why it devastated things that were along the coast. Broke the previous record of 4.56 feet. That's a lot. That's a lot. So we've smashed that record. Again, not the record we want to be smashing per se. So another thing is, for a lesson, neither of these storms, particularly this is a Helene example, but neither of these storms had directly hit Tampa. This was 130 miles west of us, and it had that much devastation, that much impact, that much damage. And so the lesson here is it does not need to be a direct impact to have a large impact. We had this happen, and it was that far away. So that's a little scary, but it also needs, we need to take that lesson and make sure that we're prepared for not only the things that are directly coming our way, but even in our neighbors, our state, and our world. So this was life-changing, right? This surge event, this is in Palmetto Beach for those familiar. You can see it up here with Tampa, not a particularly affluent neighborhood, pretty minority heavy. Regardless of that, this structure, everything that's in this house is gone. Flooring is gone, drywall is gone, furniture is gone, valuables are gone. Their whole life is upside down. And so this 130-mile away storm did that. Okay, Milton. So Milton was different. So I think like each hurricane, for lack of a better word, has its own flavor. Like it's not the same impacts to our city. So Milton was a wind event. So 80 to 100 mile per hour I think it was 91, 93 sustained winds. And this is a lower end of the number, 11.43 at this gauge, which is at Tampa International Airport. Other parts of the city saw 13, and then some parts of the city and the county saw upwards of 16 inches of rain in 24 hours. We'll talk about that, why that's such a big deal. So this was an extreme rainfall wind event. Okay, from the wind category, as a wind event, it was still just a Cat 1 for the effects that we had. So, 91, I think 93, depending on some of the gauges that we saw. So out of all the tests that we could have gotten, we got the easiest one and still had that much devastation, that many trees fall down. So just continuing to learn, take that, put that in our bank when we're making decisions and when we're realizing what could happen. Okay, from a rainfall event, this Tampa, typically gets on average about 52 inches of rain in a year. In 2024, when the hurricanes hit, and it wasn't just the hurricanes, we had some other rainfall events that led to this, we were over 80 inches of rain. We are now in a level 2 drought, so things have swung the other way to the other extreme, which is very indicative, obviously, of climate change. So, in one day, right, we got like 25%, 30% of our rainfall. That is not something our infrastructure can handle. And it also is probably why Milton was a surprise for a lot of people. People did not expect, the people who got impacted, I think most of them did not expect it. One of the reasons is this is all the way up here. So downtown here, so I think we're kind of by like USF's over here, right? So we're all the way up here and look at this neighborhood. They're using like amphibious vehicles to go through here because it is impassable. And so the folks who are up here were not expecting to be flooded like this because the people who typically expect it when they heed our warnings, which a lot of people didn't, but on Davis Islands, along the peninsula, like those are coastal, we're Floridian, surge, like you kind of get that concept, you kind of, feel like it. These people did not expect it. So the lesson here is if you have a Florida driver's or business license, you should probably have flood insurance. And you could be in flood zone X unshaded and it still doesn't mean that this cannot happen to you. These people were in probably flood X, either shaded or unshaded. That's like FEMA flood zones. Because this extreme rainfall thing is going to be a new norm and we're going to continue for this to be probably the thing that we deal with the most, more than hurricane surge. So why does this happen? So the reason this happens is Tampa is made up of 46 basins, water basins, and these are bowls. And where does water go? It goes to the lowest point because of gravity. And so the water flowed down to the lowest point, and then it just stayed there. How we get it out of the bowls is we can use pumps sometimes, and we do use them, but there's a limitation to those pumps. When you get 16 inches of rain in 24 hours, those pumps may not always be capable doing that. The water has to also have somewhere to go. So if the other parts where the water is being pumped to is also flooded, that's going to be a problem. And so our infrastructure can reduce basically the impacts, but it's not going to be eliminated. If you live at the bottom of one of these bowls, there's going to be a limitation. And if the event passes that limit, then we're kind of in trouble. Particular for this group that might be interested, some of like nature's, pumps per se was like sinks, sinkholes, wetlands, things like that. Obviously, our city is super urbanized, and a lot of those are not either present anymore or they're no longer functioning. So sinks and springs, we have like a really cool, I would love to get into detail on this, but I won't have time. Really cool sink and spring complex that drains out to the Sulphur Springs area. It's really amazing. A lot of those sinks are clogged with things that shouldn't be there. A shopping cart, for example, things that got pulled out, tires, we didn't know any, people didn't know any better, or there were bad actors that clogged these, and it takes millions of dollars now to unclog them. And so they're just clogged. And so something that was accepting millions of gallons of water a year no longer works. And this is kind of why we're in some of these predicaments. Okay, so risk of flooding. I had to, this is like stuff that I didn't have any background in. I'm not fortunate yet to be a homeowner, so I don't have like, flood insurance for my structure, just my things. And one of the things we heard the most after the event is I am not in a flood zone. That is not true. Everyone is in a flood zone. What your risk associated with that flood zone changes. So the people who are in the special flood hazard area, so very, very high risk, you're on the coast, you're high risk, you are required to buy flood insurance. But just because you live in these undetermined, that's even possibly scarier, or low or moderate, your risk is there. It's just, statistically lower, but that does not mean impossible. One of the things that we realize as a lesson learned is people, and that's our fault, that's like resilience practitioners, insurance, floodplain managers. They have not done a good job of helping people understand this stuff and breaking it down. So saying a 100-year rainfall event, people think it can only happen once every 100 years. That is not true. What that means is it's a 1 in 100 chance that this can happen to you. It's a 1% statistical chance that it can flood. And the problem with that is 30% of the national flood insurance policy flood claims came from areas outside of the high risk. So they're starting to see that a lot of this area is starting to now claims. I would say that, it's a good assumption to say that climate change might be one of those reasons that's changing. They were using data, right, based on patterns, and the patterns are changing. So one of the other things is further inland does not mean no risk. If you live in the middle of Florida, it does not mean that you don't live in a basin, that if enough water falls on top of your head, it could flood. So there's way, way too many numbers going on. But what I want you to show is the majority of our stormwater system is built to have a 5-year, 1 in 5, so 20% rainfall event, so the 20% chance of happening. So what we got during the storms was in this range, so way over here. And this is why a lot of it cannot be accommodated. We also, this is what we'll get into it more, but this is what I'm saying. It doesn't need to be a hurricane to have this happen. On June of 2025, I didn't put the year, we had a storm event, a 1 in 200 year, right? Storm event. So right here happened in June. So it just happened. I got stuck personally for 90 minutes to 2 hours trying to get out of downtown, and no cars could pass. My car could not pass. So this is happening, and it's going to keep happening. So as you can see, the water continues to be the most dangerous part of storms. We're very fortunate that in the city of Tampa, we didn't have any loss of life for either of the storms. It cannot be said for Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County did have a loss of life as a whole. And Pinellas County, obviously, there was a lot of stories about that. People who didn't heed the warnings. I think we had a meeting in this very building after the storms, a few months after, with all the emergency managers for the region, and they say about 20 to 25% people who are in mandatory evacuation zones in Florida do not evacuate. Those are the people who, usually will have the highest risk for something really, really negative to happen. All right, everyone knows this, right? Tampa General, this is our only level 1 trauma hospital in the entire region. Closest would be Orlando or Gainesville, Florida. It is on an island, very susceptible to everything. And the other problem is that the only connection to the mainland are these bridges that are also not, I don't have a lot of confidence that if we got a Cat 5 or even a Cat 4, maybe even a Cat 3, that these bridges would survive. So our connection to our level 1 trauma center is gone. This is the reality. Kayla, the city of Tampa currently, even the people who work for Tampa General now are not going to be able to undo all the legacy bad decisions that have happened. I would say my role now is to prevent us from making more bad decisions and try to stop the bleeding a little bit, but they've hunkered down. Like Tampa General is not moving. They're staying. They're going to keep investing and expanding. And that's that. But we have to start making better decisions because in 50 years from now, we're going to be the reason why people are having to deal with these problems. Now, drone team for the city of Tampa did a really amazing job after the storms, and they actually had so many successes that council and administration recognized that, funded them for hire more drones. We have 20 staff members who are drone pilots, and they all practice all from different departments and divisions. So it's like a great little synergy of interdisciplinary, like people who never would get to meet in the city because of the drone program do. And the lesson here is technology in the hands of a skilled operator is a force multiplier and lifesaver. So these people were able to put up the drones, see people who were stuck flooding, like we saw, you know, in the boat pictures before, make sure that they could rescue them. And, you know, seconds, even every second counts in those moments, very high risk moments. And so technology is great. We need to use it. Speaking of Tampa General, I'm not picking on them, but this is just lessons learned, lessons learned. One of the things they've done is they've invested in this aqua fence. It like went viral. I think it was the best marketing aqua fence could have ever gotten. So I think they're actually relocating, or not relocating, they're opening an office in Tampa, I think because of this. So aqua fence, it worked. Like for this storm, it did. I don't know, you know, there's going to be a limit, just like everything else, there's a limit. This storm, it worked. But people have come up to us after the storm and say, City of Tampa, why don't you just buy an aqua fence for every structure that we have and just protect every pump and structure? We have like 200 buildings, hundreds more of like electrified pump stations, whether that's wastewater, stormwater. There are no silver bullets for this work. Like I can't go get this aqua fence, and the setup time is incredible. It took 60 people, 3 days, 60 people, 3 days to set up the aqua fence. And it's much bigger than this picture. It goes around their entire campus. But this is not a solution for us to just hang our hat on and move on. This is not it. There's no silver bullets. This or a lot of other things. Like we need every tool in the toolbox and it's going to be different for everything. But this is not going to prevent flooding in Tampa for the foreseeable future. All right, solid waste. Very biased, one of my favorite departments, of course. You know, came up through there. Regulations can help or hinder us. This is the lessons learned. So when a storm happens, FEMA gives the city, the municipality, county 90 days to pick up everything that's storm related to get reimbursed by FEMA so that we do not accumulate all of those costs. Obviously, there's going to be some costs, but that's like the cost for the staffing, right? All the overtime work hours, right? Our folks were working 6 to 7 days a week, 12-hour days. Thanks, yeah. So lots of stuff happening. And so that 90-day, on one hand, it could be really beneficial because we were able to get back to normal, right? Like our city looked kind of normal. People, of course, were not all back in their homes in the areas that were really impacted. There are still people today that are not back in their homes. So they're always, you know, in the back of my mind. But in one way, we're able to clean up really quick. The other, it cost us about $12 to $18 million extra to do the cleanup that quickly because we had to go get contractors. We had 300 to 425 contractors to help us pick up all this debris in the 90-day timeframe. And because we were not the only city impacted all the way Florida, all the way up to Asheville, right? We're all competing for the same contractors. And so it's like, how do you get them to come to your city over someone else's city? And the way you do it is you increase the price that you're offering. So we more than doubled the rates that we were willing to pay to say, please come here instead so that we can get our FEMA reimbursement. So it almost pits cities and counties against each other. So I think that's some of the harm, right, for some of the regulations. Obviously, people's entire, I don't know if it'll play, but people's entire curbs, you could just see from the picture, their entire house is on the curb. So this is not a quick process. It's like a claw. It's like moving it. There's just no quick way to do it. It's very labor intensive and very time. We picked up 4 Rivergate towers or beer can buildings worth of debris in less than 90 days. We actually beat the 90-day by a few weeks. So we did it very quickly. I was like, I want to leave more time for questions. So I'm going to probably just run this a minute. This was really widely received by our residents. So we had a map that basically showed where where has the cleanup, the debris cleanup happened, or where are we going to next? And of course, we had still people who were like, why aren't you at my house right now? You're always gonna get that, but there's a lot of people who are like, okay, I see all the progress they've made. It's kind of like, in a queue at, I don't know, Disney, and you're like, you get to feel like you're making progress by walking, even though you still have an hour left to go. So that could be helpful. Economic impacts, I mean, a lot. There was 501, so 578 from Helene, 263 from Milton, and then just something for us to consider, right? This is really expensive. Resilient infrastructure is expensive. The storm impacts might be more expensive because then once we redo it, it could happen again. So this one light fixture saying signalizing intersections is expensive. This one little light thing is like $30,000. So just to put that into perspective. I think I'm gonna stop there so that we have time to actually chat as much as we can. I knew that this was gonna be too much for this time. Go from there.
Is anything extra that you wanna talk? It's fine. The time is fine.
I think I'm gonna go really quick. So regional partners, like, government cannot do this alone. We can't do this work alone. We can't do any of this work alone, like my work, emergency work, storm work. So these are all an ecosystem of partners that were laid out in our post-disaster redevelopment. Obviously USF is on here. And so this takes everyone, and we welcome more people to be added. We really need everyone's help. Nor should we be the one doing it, because you do not want any staff member doing surgery on you. So we're gonna let HIP General be the one to do that. Regional collaboration. I don't know why has the extra thing, but it says regional collaboration is a superpower. Tampa. I haven't really got the chance, obviously, to be a professional in a lot of other places, but Tampa does a really good job of collaborating. We love collaborating as a region, and I think that's one of the things that we have to continue to lean into. It makes us stronger, and one of the reasons, I'm gonna skip this, one of the reasons it makes us stronger. I don't know if I'll get to it in time, but it's probably all the way at the end, I'm sure. Is water does not follow, get to it. Watersheds do not follow municipal boundaries. The water does not care that it's in the city of Tampa, that it's in Pinellas County, it's in Hillsborough, it's in Pasco. It just goes where it's gonna go. And so if we can build these big, maybe regional, maybe countywide, I don't know, coastal resilience water projects, that would be beneficial. The funding is always the tricky part, because it's like our bucket is our bucket, Hillsborough County's is their bucket. How do we be friends? The money is a big problem. Or it could be a big barrier, but like combining those resources also gets you a bigger project. So that's just the reality. I would encourage anyone who's really into like coastal resilience, water, flooding. There's the Coastal Bay Coastal Master Plan, Tampa Bay Coastal Master Plan. Efforts that just kicked off. It's led by the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, who we are a member government of. They're like a quasi government. They don't have any policy authority, but they're here to convene us as member governments. And they have a technical working group for those, it could be anyone. Like, I'm on the technical group. I'm not an engineer or anything, but there's also like coastal engineers. I'm there to provide the government perspective. There's also like a community working group. So that's open to a lot more folks. And these are all the people, like when we say Tampa Bay, this is probably the widest definition of Tampa Bay you can get. Sarasota's like, please. Citrus is like, please. So we've done so good. Collaborating here that we're getting other people to be like, please, can we just join together with you guys, because you're doing a really good job. And the benefit is like Louisiana, for example, they did a coastal master plan as a state, as a region. They were able to get really big grants through that. Like, this work is very fruitful. So we're hoping that gives us an opportunity as well when you look at it. That was a lot. All right. Thank you so much for having me. Obviously, I'll be here as long as you guys want to chat. We had our Gasparilla this weekend, so we have our Bead Free campaign, and some green team members are actually there cleaning up after everyone, so they can give you the scoop on how that went. Questions, comments, anything?
Thank you for this presentation. This was excellent. And obviously there's tons of challenges that we have, but what I'm really interested in is where are the areas that are opportunities for success, right? Like where do you see us being able to leverage resources, power, anything that students here or faculty here can contribute towards getting those wins, right? Because obviously we can talk about all the things that are hard.
Of course.
Or
There's plenty.
Just like, what can we just do right now, right? Like, what can I send students to right now that would be a success?
Yeah, that's great. I guess I'll share like one example of a win. So we work like City of Tampa works with USF all the time. So we are very strong partners. We're really appreciative. We're very lucky to have exceptional, academic institution in our backyard, and we use it to the best of our ability. So from our team, one of the things I focus a lot on is urban forestry. I've learned more about trees than I probably ever wanted to, which I never thought I could say that in my life the past few years. And USF typically does our tree canopy analysis. So every 5 years by ordinance, the City of Tampa is required, this was passed by council, to conduct and see what's our tree canopy coverage in the city, figure out why, divide it and splice it in many different ways. The last study that came out was 2021 data, came out in 2023. Obviously, there's like a gap to actually do the analysis and put it all together. I think COVID also delayed it a little bit. Then one of the things that's like, okay, the City of Tampa has 4% of its city-owned land that can large canopy trees. And we're like, that's great, USF. Where is that 4%? Like, can you show me I could put a tree here, get like really more granular than like the big, 5,000 foot view of the canopy. And so we were able to contract the same folks who do the canopy analysis because they're already passionate about this. They're super knowledgeable about this. And we would probably be paying quadruple, if not more, to do it for a private company to do it versus the university. And so they were able to help that, and they continue to be really great partners. Gosh, there's probably so many answers, but I think, what we were chatting about before is I don't, going back to council and even our own staff, right? Like I could probably say, I might be underselling, but I could probably rattle off if I try really hard, like 100 folks who are city staff members who are really jazzed about sustainability resilience, like want to support us in any way we can. And that's amazing. I'm super happy for those relationships. But at the end of the day, what gets pushed through at the city is what people are loud about and who gets in front of council. Being involved in local government, it's a big ask. It's not set up. It's set up in itself is like not equitable because who's available at Thursday at 9 a.m. every other week? That excludes a lot of people, most people who have jobs. But building those relationships, like those council members are there, those are your elected officials. You could do the mayor as well. The mayor will probably just say, go see Kayla. So like you have me already, like you don't need me. I'm here doing the work. But advocating externally is, I think, super important. And that's a gap that I think Tampa has. I think a lot of local governments have, but one of my missions is to really hope to have that external coalition because Mayor Castro's done spring of 2027. We don't know who the next mayor will be, and maybe they don't care about sustainability or resilience. We've certainly seen that at the federal level, right? The pendulum, the political pendulum. And so that could very much happen in the city of Tampa. And so we need to make sure that we're set up not only internally, but there's external folks who continue to make sure that this work gets done and is prioritized. And I don't have anyone necessarily who's, going up at council asking like, where are the solar panels on this building? Like I'm saying it and I'll try to advocate, but there's only so much I can do as one person or 3 people on a team.
So related to the other question, you said there were like 147 initiatives on the climate action equity plan.
Yeah, between all 3, there's over 250. Lucky me.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Has there been any, since you've been there, has there been any that you've made, you feel like you're especially proud of, you've made like a lot of progress on, you've made, or you feel like has made a big impact in the Tampa Bay area?
Yeah, there's quite a few, like I wouldn't be able to like rattle off like 16.5 in the climate action plan, but just like general big wins and concepts for sure. And then another update would be one of the things I'll be working on, especially as Mayor Castor's administration winds down, is kind of recapping, like taking an inventory of all those actions and reporting on the progress. So even if we haven't made any progress, like we need to know that as a city, the community needs to know that. And that way we have like a baton that we can hand to whoever comes after us, right, for the next administration. Big wins, let's see. I would say we secured, it hasn't started yet, but back to Palmetto Beach where that house is, that's been like a big focus area. Whit was extremely passionate about it. And his passion has, passed on to me for Palmetto Beach. So we have a huge grant from the Department of Transportation that we landed. I want to say it's $27 million to redo the seawall that's along Bermuda Boulevard. So it's a 100-year-old seawall. So going back to like, we have 127 miles of coastline, and I don't know if we always like internally or even the community thinks of ourselves as like a coastal city. Like I feel like we're like, oh, beach, Pinellas. No, we have water here and we have coastal infrastructure here that we need, that we're gonna have, again, going back to like decisions that were made legacy, like those times to either make new decisions, they're coming and they're coming quick. On, are we gonna rebuild the seawall? Are we gonna do, try to naturalize some of those? At the end of the day, that Bermuda Boulevard, right, it's a 100-year-old seawall. Those folks, I mean, they just don't want a seawall that's crumbling, let alone protection from events. And we're not going to be able to be honest, we're not going to be able to build a 9-foot seawall. Like it's just not going to happen. And so at some point, you're going to have to make a call on like, how high do you go from a risk benefit analysis and cost analysis? And then what can you do internally? So that's one of those other areas where even though it's on the coast, it is a bowl. So then once water gets over the wall, it goes to other parts of the neighborhood and you have to figure out how to get it out. So that's a big win. Oh man, I mean, we haven't necessarily done anything yet, but like anything extra, but our tree canopy, I think it is something to be celebrated. New York City, Miami-Dade County, like they're trying to get to 30%. We have folks who are like, the house is on fire because we've seen a bit of a reduction in canopy. And I'm not saying it's not worth, you have to stay, back to the resilience. If you don't stay concentrated, it's not going to happen. So it's like good to be very concentrated, but we are sitting so good compared to a lot of other cities in the world. And we're a changing, growing city. Like every tree is not going to be able to stay where it is today, but that's where like replanting programs and things like that could be great. I would say the green team, has been something that's, we're on year number 4. So that was a huge lift. It started in sustainability resilience. Parks and Rec now owns it as a department, but they're AmeriCorps members. So that launched. So that was like one of the first grants we ever applied for. I don't think he exactly knew what he was signing up for, but that we'll let that go. And they are doing environmental stewardship every single day. So 10 to 20 people full-time hours are doing environmental stewardship projects. And so that could be anything from litter cleanup to education and just like visibility, like seeing them out in a park. Our residents seeing that is amazing, and it allows them, I'm sure, to go up and ask you guys questions, right, about city programs, and they kind of get to be those liaisons to our community. Up there for now. I'm sure there's more.
More questions?
Hey, how does your department interact with the water, wastewater, and solid waste groups? I would imagine, of course, there's tons of overlap between those departments, and I guess I'm curious as to how even like funds are allocated as a collaboration as opposed to exist in one pot. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So our relationship right now is purely just like influence is the best way I could describe it. So I obviously, being that I was an intern in solid waste, I have a very strong relationship with our solid waste department. We have a 3-person team when we're fully staffed. They're down to 2 right now, of our waste reduction team, and that's probably the ones that I am like the closest to. Lots of focus. So we have like a backyard composting program. They're just trying to see what stuff we can take out of our trash, bins and figure out a higher and better use. Water and wastewater, like I've had to build those being in this position. I would say water would be my next strongest. Wastewater needs to continue, is one that I'm continuing to try and work at. Fun fact for you guys, like especially Dr. Colhane, like always instilled, right, the biogas thing. So right now we've, Mr. Biogas, we flare our biogas, which is not good, right? That's like required by the EPA. Like you can't just let the methane go. So you like ignite it so that it burns. So we're using energy to burn energy. Obviously, that's not great. Neither from a carbon emission standpoint nor just like a general concept. So that's something that I hope to. We will not make any progress regarding like infrastructure through this administration, but I would hope to at least continue to start having we've had those conversations, started those conversations, and make sure that with the master plan update that's happening right now, an engineering firm just won that bid to go ahead and redo it, and make sure I'm in that room for those conversations to advocate that biogas, RNG, whatever we want to do with that is something that we should be doing. So yeah, just purely relationship building that like, either push my way in or like usually when you get to a good enough place, they'll be like, Kayla's helpful in this. We should bring her in. That's always the goal, of course, but not everyone is inviting us into those meetings. Sometimes you have to force.
I think exposure to their critical assets is probably a way to speak their language.
Say that again. Oh, yes. Yeah, and this is not for any specific department, but of course, I think a lot of engineers would be like, we've got it, like we don't need your help. We are taking those things into consideration. But they're not always speaking citywide, right? So wastewater is like, okay, yeah, we'll do this RNG thing. And I'm like, well, have you thought about like all the 50% of the trash of a solid waste trash bin in the city is organic material, and that could be an additional feedstock? And of course, the answer is no. And so that's really like that high level view of we can make people talk to each other because they have their own buckets of money. They are not forced to collaborate. They can just kind of stay in their own little island and do what they've been doing, and they do it well. Like our wastewater department does a great job. We were one of the first advanced water treatment facilities in Florida. So they have a really amazing history. And so I think we're just hoping that we continue to stay on the edge of innovation.
I have one more.
Please, come on, give them.
I am partly familiar with some of the initiatives that you have as a part of the plan. I'm trying to remember if green infrastructure is included as a part of the urban development in Tampa with, the development that's being current or advertised for the future. How is the new impervious area in the city being taken into consideration?
Yeah.
Perspective.
Yes, green infrastructure is always something that I will be advocating for. There's always going to be, I think we have a lot of room for improvement. I wouldn't say we're like the best, most versed in green infrastructure when you look around the city. The biggest hurdle is always the maintenance piece. It's changing people's minds that the maintenance, to be fair, green infrastructure has maintenance too. It's just maintenance that those folks are used to. They're like, I know I have to suck up all the stuff that fell into the stormwater drain, the leaves and the water bottles and all the other stuff, the plastic bags. But having to plant this native thing, like I don't know what that is. And so it's just like a lack of knowledge. And also I don't know that we really have like we contract a lot as a city, probably every city, right? And that comes down to like the staffing thing. We have more demands than we have staff for. And so I don't know that there's really like private industry who's like, we're ready to build Tampa's green infrastructure tomorrow. Like if they're here, like we have firms who can design it, but the maintenance of it is a different story. there's, 10 billion firms who will design the green infrastructure, but once they design it for you, they leave. So the maintenance is on us.
Question. What made you choose Tampa instead of like Miami? Was it like opportunity or more interest in Tampa?
Purely just personal. I was like, I don't want to move back to Miami. I just knew. I mean, something in me when I left when I was 18. I was like, I'm good. Like, love Miami to visit. But it's just too much chaos, like chaos traffic. I always say jokingly in my personal life, if Tampa gets it wrong, we'll be the next Miami. Sorry, Miami, but I don't want us to be Miami. I want us to be Tampa. Gainesville is amazing, amazing nature, like around it, spring country, so good. Pains Prairie, never been, it's probably one of the most unique parks in all of Florida. But I also had already spent 6 years in Gainesville, and I was like, I'm ready for something a little more than what Gainesville had to offer. Yeah, Tampa was great, and I love the water, so.
So for those of you that don't know, I'm Dr. Bates. I teach the core course of research methods, and also I'm the director of our academic capstone experience. And I've heard you talk about a lot of needs and a lot of ways, progress, and that your team is small but mighty. If I could send you 3 people, either researchers or interns or a combo of both, what's your top 3 wish list? What would you like them to do?
It's a great question. I have an answer for that today. That's just like a dream, a fever dream that I've never gotten to indulge in. I will say I was like one thing, I didn't listen to Dr. Colhane when I was here and I didn't take a GIS course. You should do that if you haven't already. So I would probably help some technical assistance with like GIS would be helpful. We have a lot of data, but it's not accessible, including our vulnerability assessment. Like we have all these GIS files that are just like in a folder. And I'm like, I need these to not be in the PDF because if someone needs to look up like, probably not a house, but let's say a business is making an infrastructure decision, TGH would be the perfect example. And I want to see like how my infrastructure needs to be built so that we can mitigate the impact of sea level rise, let's say from the year 20 through the year 2070. They could use that data, but the data right now is trapped in a PDF, and that PDF is serving absolutely no one because no one has read that from front to back except for me, including staff. So I would say that would be one. Tree inventory stuff, also GIS related. I think that's all I've got for now, but there's always more. Probably the implementation, like the progress report stuff. Like I know that's a little more administrative, but it's just going to be a lot of work to do to get that foundation and like that infrastructure, the electronic set up.
So I got your list, so I'll send you.
I actually came up with that pretty quickly. I surprised myself.
I feel like we can accomplish that. I feel like we can absolutely get you some GIS and some people to work on.
Yes, Jay. Take GIS. Let's just
Extremely acceptable.
And granted, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I think we have the capacity.
Okay, well, always here and available. Monik has my contact information if anyone needs it, and always here to be accessible, grab a coffee, anything, usually here. So appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. So we have some pizza, guys, so you can kind of stay, talk a little bit to each other, and just grab it.
I'll be here if anyone wants. Congratulations. Yeah. Are you super?
You feel them?
Happy? You feel it? He lives awesome.
I was here though.
I just, you guys were already seated.
Okay.
And then I. Yeah, hi. I wanted to see you guys. Like, maybe like in an hour.
Professionally, like.
I'm like directly seated. And then it's
Hello, hey. It's like- Oh, you guys are right there. I didn't realize that.
But I know something like words I would ask her.
And like, so probably.
Hey,
Saying we just.
work out.